Now, here in Nigeria, tensions are running high over protests planned for today and the week by opposition activists. They've described the demonstrations as days of rage to demand a better Nigeria. Where at least for today, those protests have now been disrupted by the police, calling them treasonous and warning people not to take part. But the organizers have vowed to go ahead, despite the arrest of their leader, a pro-democracy campaigner and former presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore. His arrest has been roundly condemned by many leading Nigerians, including the leader of the opposition People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, and the Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka, who said it was reminiscent of the oppressive regime of the late dictator General Sani Abacha. And also the human rights lawyer Femi Falana, who criticized the position of the government that Mr. Sowore's call for revolution amounted to an attempt to overthrow the Buhari regime. But the government insisted the organizers of the protests were people seeking to gain power through violent and undemocratic means.
If we are operating as a responsible security organization and someone is calling for revolution in Nigeria, and what is revolution? Primarily, it means a revolt, it means an insurrection, it means insurgency, it means forceful takeover of government. And this is a democracy. Nigeria operates a democratic system. Nigeria, we all are aware, is not a banana republic and cannot suddenly be made one. Nigeria is respected in the Committee of Nations. Nigeria is not just the giant of Africa, but the pride of Africa. So, the DSS would not just sit by and watch someone or his groups or cohorts would want to rise and threaten the peace, unity, constitutionalism of our beloved country. Whether Sowore is with the DSS or not, the answer is emphatic, is in the affirmative. Yes, he's with us. And why is he with us? He has crossed the lines. He has threatened public safety. Sowore has, as a matter of fact, threatened the peaceful coexistence, social harmony of Nigeria. And there is apprehension, there is anxiety. Citizens, residents are worried as to what will happen next.
A spokesman for the Department of State Security there. Well, for more on the protests and the government's response, I'm joined now in the studio by the security analyst and former director of the Nigerian State Security Service, Barrister Mike Ejiofor, by one of the new breed politicians and former presidential candidate, Ahmed Buhari, and by Dr. Biodun Adeniyi, public affairs analyst and senior lecturer on communications at Bayes University, Abuja. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And I'll start with you, Ahmed Buhari, because you are a former presidential candidate. You're also somebody who's pretty outspoken when it comes to issues of human rights and the civil rights in Nigeria. Does this arrest of Sowore, let's start with that, suggest a disrespect for human and civil rights or a respect for the tenets of the rule of law?
Thank you for having me. I think what is most paramount here is the fact that Sowore is one person that we worked with along the process during the campaigns, and I know how passionate he is. This is somebody who lives in the United States of America, who could as well just cross his legs and relax over there, but then he's really concerned about how things can be changed in Nigeria. No doubt I can see a young man who really wants to see something be better for the country. However, you know, when it comes to the peace of our nation, we must be very careful as to how we drive it. You see, most importantly, I think we should understand that the words, the utterances that we make could actually put things on the right path or destroy them. And that is why we keep warning everybody who wants to talk about advocacy that the way you go about it is very, very crucial. There are lots of pathways to the marketplace, but which pathway you choose to follow would determine how well you get to the marketplace. We all want a better country, no doubt, but let's be honest about it. If you talk about a revolution, you are truly actually, you know, threatening to change the government of the day. There is no how you're going to look at it. I've heard a few prominent people, even legal people, speak about the position of Sowore and, oh, it was not a revolution, it's a protest. Look, every country in Africa in the last 5-10 years that has embarked on a revolution, as we've seen, it didn't start with a revolution. It started either with a peaceful march that later erupted into a revolution.
So the issue for you,
yes.
I don't mean to interrupt
yes,
you,
please.
is the use of the term revolution.
I think
not so much what they're trying to do, because I mean, if you look broadly at what they're saying they want to better education for Nigerians.
That is the point. They really want the right
jobs.
They want good things. They
right.
want better things. But like I said to you initially, the way you go about these things are very, very important. That is why, for me, as a former presidential candidate and someone who has worked with this gentleman, I think what I would really suggest is to say to the federal government, please forgive him for his excesses. He might have used the words wrongly, but by no means do I think he wants to erupt or disrupt the peace of the country.
Let me bring Dr. Biodun Adeniyi in. Forgive him for his excesses, or is it his right to protest if he wants to?
Well, if it is protest, that's understandable. But first, I understand that government has a responsibility anywhere in the world to ensure that there's peace in the system. And to that extent, anybody that tends to cross the line, like the DSS said, of course, can be checked, can be apprehended.
So you think
can
he
be
crossed the line?
No, I'm not going to say that.
Right.
In the opinion of the government, he probably crossed the line. But in my opinion, I will have, if I'm in a position to advise government, I will have just advised them to probably try and see how you can humor him, because before a revolution can effectively take place, there has to be some preconditions. If you look at all recent revolutions in the world, perhaps from the Bolshevik Revolution to the one in Cuba, orchestrated by Che Guevara and Fidel Castro, there were some preconditions. There has to be some cultural homogeneity, and beyond the economic problems we are having, there has to be some synergy of purpose along the lines of culture and all of that. And again, take the question of language. I don't see any problem with use of the word revolution. It's just government's interpretation that is calling attention to what Sowore is doing and trying to create a lion out of him. Okay, there are different kinds of. We have had cultural revolution before.
Absolutely.
We have had industrial revolution, and all of them are not necessarily negative. Okay, there's a sense in which the revolution can be positive. You know, but government probably relied on the textbook definition of revolution, violent change of
political revolution.
Political revolution
Right.
is not necessarily negative, and
Right.
it doesn't have to be violent in some context. Language is moving, language is influential, you know, it is very dynamic, you know. Modern definition of revolution has moved from the violent, you know, not just the textbook, you know, black and white definition of the word from the angle in which government is looking at it.
Besides,
so rather, I would say that Sowore is actually not capacitated to lead a revolution.
I was just going to say that it's hardly possible for him to actually lead that kind of violent revolution that the government is paranoid about.
That we have had in the past have been confined to only Lagos. That's why I was talking about the heterogeneous nature of the Nigerian society. So why not government just humor him? I understand the position of government. Okay, let's nip this in the bud before it snowballs, you know, before it becomes something else, before people take advantage of it. But again, there's a sense in which government can change tactics and say, okay, you want to lead a revolution in this country. How are you going to do it? Where are you going to start? Government is almighty. You know, government is a very powerful machinery that is Sowore. You know, I don't see a Sowore leading any consequential movement that will snowball into a revolution in this country.
Right. Okay. Let me bring Barrister Mike Ejiofor in. You were, of course, a former director of the Nigerian State Security Service, the same service that went and picked him up. Is just looking at what's been happening today so far with the protests and the attempts to muzzle those protests, has the government been effective, do you think, in silencing the voices of dissent, or are these voices getting louder?
Well, before I make my contribution, I think we should be able to lay a foundation. What is revolution? I just want to make a quotation here. It's an overthrow or repudiation and thorough replacement of an established government or political system by the people governed.
That's the literal interpretation, which is what Dr. Biodun Adeniyi was talking
interpretation.
about. Right.
He didn't stop at revolution now. He talked about chasing out people in government I don't know whether you actually watched the...
Yes, that is true.
That's true.
Chasing up, and there will be no SSS. So under that condition, what do? He has to be invited to explain some of the things it means. Because you cannot just sweep such grievous pronouncement under the carpet.
Yes.
He has some explanations to make. That is not to say, you see, we should be able to distinguish, because like he said, I have watched a lot of analysts, even legal luminaries, telling you that revolution is not criminal. But there are acts of revolution that can lead to criminality. We remember what happened in Arab Spring, Libya and the rest of them, all the things that are happening. So if government had taken the initiative ab initio, I didn't think they would have found themselves in the position they found
is
themselves.
it an issue of the government, and I'll ask you this, Ahmed, the government stepping in to, as he said, nip this in the bud because of the potential of it mushrooming? Or should the government be focusing on what appears to be its failings, which is what is in generating this kind of passion, you know, in the people of Nigeria?
I think one of the crucial things that have been mentioned here today is the heterogeneity of this action. You know, like he said, it's a Lagos thing and a social media thing.
Well, it took place in Abuja as well.
I mean, the one in Abuja was supposed to take place today, and a lot of people called and said, it is raining. And I said, do you know what a revolution truly is? A rain should not even stop.
I'm afraid I won't turn up. It's raining.
I won't
Wake
turn up.
me
It's
up when
raining.
it's all over.
Wake me up. A revolution, when you're about to face a revolution, you're about to face bullets. Now, and bombs. But now this is people who truly, in all honesty, are still riding in their cars. They still have water. There's electricity.
Right. In fairness to the
yes,
people,
yes.
I understand that a protest took place at the Nigerian Human Rights Commission.
Yes.
I suppose people had umbrellas and so on, but it was more a scattering of people rather than a big body of people.
Like I said from the beginning, a lot of people want to see something happen differently, and then the whole idea of, I see what is happening in the United States, I see what is happening in the United Kingdom, I want to see it happen here. It's a process. It does not just happen overnight. We had an opportunity in 2019 February to make that happen. We went to the polls, and collectively, every other person that contests the power from the two major parties, APC and PDP, were only able to muscle out 183,000 votes. That was the revolution that we were supposed to bank upon, but we failed. What we're supposed to do is to regroup and plan how we're going to do it again in 2023. But for us to say we want to destabilize a government that's already progressing, I think it's a problem, which is why I keep saying to politicians, the mere fact that you lose an election doesn't mean that you should come back and say, I'm going to make it ungovernable for you. You were supposed to support that government to help it succeed. That is what you should be doing, not trying to say how you can pull it down. Because at the end of the day, if you mess things up today, you may not be able to govern it tomorrow. Should you get the
Hold that
opportunity.
thought. We're going to take a break. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat about the so-called Revolution Now protests, which appear to have fizzled out. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. So the Revolution Now protests, facing tear gas and gunshots from police and threats from the government, appear to have fizzled out for now. The initial spark for the demonstrations and its central figure, the human rights campaigner, publisher and former presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore, arrested by the State Security Service. The police calling the protest treasonous and saying Mr. Sowore was calling for the overthrow of the Nigerian government. Using the hashtag Revolution Now, his coalition for revolution movement had called on people across Nigeria to take to the streets in their millions to demand an end to insecurity and what they called bad governance. They also want free education and healthcare for all, and have called for key sectors of the Nigerian economy to be nationalized.
Our masses have no access to public health. The ruling elite are traveling abroad with their families and their friends, for medical treatment. The reason why we are here today, this revolution is an idea whose time has come, and we want the government to know that if they fail to allow us to constructively engage our nation and to speak, the masses themselves will rise up in millions, and it will be too late for them. The reason why we are here today is to bring the frustration of our people from the fringes, from the local communities across our nations, for Nigerians and the government to know that what is going on today, that we are tired. Our people are tired of the killings and the kidnappings, where herdsmen are unleashing terror, kidnappers and bandits are unleashing terror on our people. Our people are tired. The revolution that we are talking about is already happening. The government must see that the revolution is happening in our fringes, happening in our localities. The government must know that things are happening. We are few in number, but we are not few in our reasoning. We are few in the number that came here, but we are not few by the reason why we are here. Because we have the mandate of over 100 million Nigerians who have been oppressed, bastardized, subjugated. But one day, the masses will rise up and take destiny into their hand. And we want this government to know this is a government that supported a revolution in Egypt. This is a government that received the military guys who came from Sudan about a few weeks ago. Now, this government did not condemn the uprising in Sudan. This government embraced even those who took over power in Sudan. But we want this government to know that we are not even held, to use any force to take over government. We are peaceful people. We believe in democracy. But one thing is this: the government cannot contend with the forces of the masses. Because one thing is that no government is bigger than the power of its own people.
And that's some of the protesters earlier today in Abuja in front of the Human Rights Commission. They are obviously supporters of the young man who was arrested, Omoyele Sowore. With me in the studio, the security analyst and former director of the Nigerian State Security Service, Barrister Mike Ejiofor, one of Nigeria's new breed politicians and former presidential candidate, Ahmed Buhari, and Dr. Biodun Adeniyi, public affairs analyst and senior lecturer in communications at Bayes University, Abuja. Thank you for staying with us, and I'll come to you, Dr. Biodun. For some people, it's beginning to look like the government is maintaining its grip on power by ruthlessly suppressing all opposition and all critical voices. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I think some people might actually be a little bit harsh. Don't forget what I said earlier. The government has a responsibility, and they always have their own judgment before they take any action. But what I don't like really is when government is acting rightly, but their tactics, their technique makes them look, puts them in a situation where the public will start blaming them. Okay, I would have wanted, for instance, Sowore invited, in a very civil way, maybe through a letter. Yes, we know he's going to publish it, but invitation is different from arrest. We've seen the video of how he was arrested. Looking like a strong arm tactic. Somebody who is
he was hustled out.
Who is armless, just himself alone with 6 heavily armed, hooded.
Right, we're looking at those pictures now on the screen as he was hustled out of his house.
Absolutely. In that situation, you just make him, you want the public, the local and the international community will start becoming sympathetic to his cause, even though his strategy is
and even with the people in Nigeria, ordinary people who would not normally have been interested.
Yeah, so that's what it is really, I beg your pardon, that's what it is really. And I think it's just about tactics, Government should try to understand that revolution has become, the word revolution shouldn't be problematic in itself because language is dynamic, like I said, it mutates.
So it's evolved,
it's evolutionary.
Yes.
And it has gestated from that black letter understanding of revolution being a negative thing, being something that is violent in orientation. Because other than political change, which revolution encapsulates, there's also cultural revolution. There can be industrial revolution. We have had one before, and there are social revolution going on all over the place. And there's revolution in communication as well.
Absolutely.
And these things are positive.
The internet is part of a communications revolution.
It could be from Sowore's own understanding that the revolution he's talking about is one that will bring about improvement in government. Perhaps they are trying to galvanize government in their own way through protestation, through highlighting some of their objectives, for government to pay attention to those things and perhaps address them. Right. That could be his own understanding. So I would have wanted a kind of engagement with him. Government is sophisticated. They have very salutary people in their system that can engage him at his own level and come up with an understanding. But now, like I said, they have lionized him. They have given him sympathy across the globe. The global media is becoming interested in Nigeria.
Yeah. He's been turned into a living martyr.
Absolutely. And to some extent, It's a kind of distraction. That's not what we want in the circumstance.
And let me bring you in, Ahmed Buhari. I mean, do you think this sort of thing inspires a growing climate of fear in Nigeria, that people are beginning to feel scared about going against the government? Because, I mean, we've seen repeatedly now, everybody who questions the government, there appears to be, you know, moves against them. I mean, the Islamic movement in Nigeria, we're trying to get the government to obey a court order, and the government prescribed them. The Amnesty International tries to draw attention to issues of, you know, human rights violations, and they're trying to get them to leave the country.
Yeah, again, he mentioned something very critical. Some of these things aren't exactly wrong, but the process at which the government goes about them is what now portrays them to be a fault on the side of government.
So you agree that the government is going about it the wrong way?
I think so too.
Right.
I think a gentle invitation would have landed on his table. Whether he decides to publish it or not, it doesn't matter. He goes and visits them. They tell him, look, what you're doing is wrong. You know, take the right route. Do not do what you're doing, because obviously it's going to hit up the polity, and we don't want that to happen. You know, and again, one other thing that is very important when we look at all of this that is going on, I mean, before the 2019 general election, we were on the field for about 3.5 years, you know, talking about the government, how we want things to be improved.
And being critical of the government.
Yeah, we were critical about the government, and nobody picked up anybody. Sowore also said lots of things. But because that season was a campaign season, I believe that the government allowed some of those things to go through. But now we are back to a system, and we want things to go, you know.
So in other words, we can't criticize the government anymore because the election season
that's
is
not
over.
what I'm saying.
I think he's talking about strategy.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying.
Right, okay.
We just need to be careful, because at the end of the day, I just want a country that we can all, you know, sit down together and make work.
No, I understand all that. Well, let me bring in the man who used to be one of the directors of the Nigerian State Security Service, Barrister Mike Ejiofor. I mean, you give us some insight into how these things happen. How are these types of action by the DSS taken against citizens in this country? Do they take orders from the presidency, or do they act on their own?
Of course, the State Security Service acts on its own in national interest of national security.
Right. So they simply decided, okay, this guy has gone far enough.
Yeah.
Not an instruction from the president.
No. Like the spokesman said, he said he has crossed the line. Now, I'll give you an instance.
Right.
If you look at the video that went viral, that's inciting enough.
What video?
If the video that was released by Sowore,
right,
where he was talking about the non-existence of the SSS,
right,
so sacrificing his life, he would die.
Well, surely the SSS have shown him that they do exist.
So exactly. So if you can be bold to tell people that you make sure the SSS does not exist,
right,
you make sure you sacrifice your life, you are not afraid of death, you are mobilizing millions of people that you cannot control. Because if you're talking of these protests, it can be hijacked by some unknown persons. So it's better the government or the State Security Service, which is charged with maintenance of internal security, takes the initiative to bring him, interrogate him based on the information they have. Because in the public domain, you look at so many issues coming up, that he has sponsorship from foreign countries, he has this, he has connection with this, he's being funded by. So the SSS has to look into all these allegations with a view to establishing the link and his connection to see whether he's acting alone or is acting in concert with other people. I am, most times, if you recall, that when I come here, when the government is going wrong, I'll tell you, no.
That is true.
The government has gone wrong on this part. But on this particular issue, the State Security Service is charged with maintenance of internal security. And no responsible government or security agency will sit down, fold his hands, and watch the national security of this country being threatened by one person.
Right, but looking now at the protests, beyond Mr. Sowore himself, who was clearly the person who used the language that the government finds offensive, what about the people, ordinary people, who say that they're out on the streets? Those people we saw speaking a minute ago, they're not calling for an overthrow of the government. They're saying that they want things to change. I mean, it sounds like a warning to them from the government that they will use force and violence to suppress any protests that are linked to that call, even if those protests are peaceful.
You know, what percentage of the people are they representing? You talked about, he said he has 100 million people that he can mobilize that are on his side. And you ask yourself, what did he score in the election? So what he didn't get through the election, he wants to get through the back door. So that is sinister, yes, because he didn't score for 19,000, yes. So if you have 100 million people following you and they were not able to vote for you and you want to now get that vote,
right.
Some people might criticize me, but we're talking of national interest. It's not the interest of Buhari or interest of Sowore
right.
or my personal interest. We're talking of national interest.
Okay, hold
things
that.
Capable of derailing our
Right.
democracy.
Okay, hold that thought. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat about the Revolution Now protests that appear to have been muscled out by the Nigerian police. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, as you may have heard, Omoyele Sowore, a pro-democracy activist, publisher of the online news service Sahara Reporters and former presidential candidate, was arrested in his home in the early hours of Saturday. His arrest was apparently connected to what's been called Revolution Now, which is a series of planned protests against what the organizers called bad governance in Nigeria. They were supposed to kick off today, but the police, calling them illegal and treasonous, muscled in with tear gas, gunshots and a wave of arrests, preventing many from joining the march. Mr. Sowore contested the most recent election in Nigeria on the platform of the African Action Congress Party, the AAC. His arrest has been widely condemned.
The meaning ascribed to the protest or revolution by the police is likely to have embarrassed the government, because neither under the Criminal Code Act nor under the Terrorism Act is the war revolution criminalized. In 2015, after the general elections in 2015, the APC was proud and happy when it was said that it had led the Nigeria's democratic revolution, which unseated the PDP. Nigerians have the right to protest for or against the government. And the last protest, the last street protest led by General Muhammadu Buhari, the current president, was on the 19th of November 2014, where he and other leaders of the APC protested against the security of the country. So if other Nigerians are protesting against the worsening insecurity in the country tomorrow, if they are protesting and demanding job creation for our army of unemployed youths, if they are challenging income disparity in the country, and if they are demanding the payment of the 30,000 naira minimum wage and others, those demands cannot be classified as mutinous or treasonable. Therefore, there is no cause for alarm. All those who had planned to take part in the protests should not be deterred, because the police will be required to protect them. No more, no less. We are not a conquered people. The police and the State Security Service will have to appreciate that we are not a conquered people. Therefore, you cannot continue to terrorize Nigerians by invoking the provisions of the Terrorism Act or the Criminal Code Act. I have read the demands of the organizers of this protest, and I cannot identify any aspect of it that can be classified as terrorism or treasonable.
That's the fiery human rights lawyer Femi Falana there. With me in the studio, the security analyst and former director of the Nigerian State Security Service, Barrister Mike Ejiofor, one of Nigeria's new breed politicians and former presidential candidate Ahmed Buhari, and Dr. Biodun Adeniyi, public affairs analyst and senior lecturer in communications at Bayes University in Abuja. Thank you for staying with us. Dr. Biodun, you heard Femi Falana there.
Right.
Did he actually, Sowore, demand a revolution in Nigeria in that literal sense? Or was he merely trying to draw attention to what he and millions of other Nigerians believe is bad governance in this country?
Well, in that case, we'll look at the form and the substance of it. If we look at the form of it, we know that what he's demanding is not a revolution. But if we look at the substance, we can say, okay, to some extent, he's asking for some kind of fundamental changes in the way we live, in the way we are being governed.
Right, action on the part of the people.
On the part of the government.
Right,
okay, and
as well as the people. Right.
Asking people to be more responsive, not to be lethargic, not to sit back and watch their rights trampled upon by the powers that be. But if you look at it again from another perspective, you know, government is a very powerful organization. Apart from God in the life of every human being, government is the next, you know, and when a government moves against a minuscule, otherwise minuscule individual, an identity like Sowore, it tends towards an overkill most of the time. And that's why, you know, sympathy is gradually moving from the genuine cause and concern of the government to Sowore, who probably have overstepped his bounds in some circles, as some people are alleging, to some extent as well. Yeah.
You know, I mean, you don't use a hammer to smash an ant.
Absolutely, but it's not late yet. You know, steps can be retraced in the circumstance. Government can release him. People can be made, opinion leaders that are very critical of his arrest, for instance, can be made to talk, can be approached to talk to him. You know, these are respected leaders, legends of our time, that can be spoken to in the first instance, even before the arrest or even before an invitation to talk to him. That with the way you are going is a very wrong way. You contested an election, you said everything you needed to say, you abused leaders like he alluded to. I mean, it was a campaign period, nobody touched you. But now we're in a post-election period, government is settling down, and you're calling for a revolution. That could be problematic for the peace of the land. We're not going to take this from you. Opinion leaders can be made to talk to him. Then if he ignores them at that stage, then government can find other ways. But this strategy, for me, I think is a stronger one. And it's an overkill,
right?
You know, that is not going to help government in the execution of its
And
tactics.
just taking what you're saying further, you've now got respected people like Femi Falana, who are considered the conscience of society, Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka, all the rest of them. I mean, coming out and roundly condemning. I mean, Soyinka is comparing the government to the Abacha days. I mean, the General Abacha, who was well known by everybody as a dictator. Given all of that, Ahmed Buhari, former presidential candidate, new breed politician, the kind of person we're looking up to try and give us a new Nigeria, transform this society. Do you believe that Mr. Sowore should be released unconditionally and without delay?
You know, from the opening statement I made, I said, yes, I would want him to be released. I would want the government to understand that there are just some excesses with the way he presented his case, which, of course, from every other perspective, seems to be a good cause. However, we cannot shy away from the fact that government at every point in time would want to maintain order, maintain peace, maintain sanity, especially at a time when the government is actually just settling down after what one would call a rough electioneering process, period. Now, he said something very critical about heterogeneity of the cause and how well the entire country is being carried on. When I first got the call about this, I told the person who called me, because I've been in Abuja for a few weeks, I said, I haven't heard anything about Sowore's campaigns. I haven't heard anything about any revolution. I haven't even heard about his arrest. And like, where are you? And I said, to be honest with you, it just means that some people in some parts of this country will not be part of this. And once that is going to be the case, that means the strategy is wrong. And so whatever it is that we're supposed to be thinking of doing right now is to see how we can go back to the drawing board. Whatever it is that we did in pre-2019 election, we must be ready to do something better to woo the people with these lofty ideas, with this dreamland Nigeria that we want them to see, to join us, to support us, to get into elective position, to create that kind of change that we want. If that is not going to be done, I do not think this process can take us to where we want to go to.
Okay, let me bring in Barrister Mike Ejiofor, their former director of the State Security Service. Surely such a move, I mean, it must occur to the DSS themselves that such a move to arrest Sowore, which is clearly being seen by so many as odious and a travesty of justice. We saw a respected senior advocate of Nigeria there, Femi Falana, talking about it. I mean, such a move to arrest him can only deepen sentiment against the government.
Well, you see, like Doctor said, governance is very deep. We don't have the information the State Security Service has before taking the action they took.
Yeah, but they made a public statement giving the reasons why they took the action.
They will give you all the details of the information they have. So all we need to do, much as I agree with them that there's need to kind of negotiate this issue out, the State Security Service too must be given time to look at the merits and the demerits of the allegations against him, because they cannot just go and pick him up without having a background information.
Yeah, but the problem, Barrister Ejiofor, is that everybody here knows the history of the Nigerian armed forces, the history of the DSS, and it has always been perceived as one that is in cahoots with the government of the
I'm
day,
happy to use
in
perception.
oppression of ordinary
I'm happy to use the
Nigerians.
word perception.
Well, it is a perception. Obviously, we have to be circumspect in the way we describe these things. I mean, the right to protest is the issue against what is perceived to be bad governance. Why should that be prescribed? What would be the basis for that severe circumscription of the right to speech and assembly and peaceful protest?
If you recall, Charles, there was a time, there was a management in the State Security Service that openly condemned here on their high-handedness.
Yes,
I did that here.
I do recall that.
Yes. So, with the present management of this, I don't see the SSS. That's why I say I'm happy with the word you use, perception. You hardly hear of the State Security Service now until this very crisis we're having at hand. But I believe that they will look at the merits of the matter and possibly release him, or if there's any case established against him, charge him to court. I think those are the two options. And but I believe, I want to believe that a negotiated settlement will be better, because we have a lot of crises in our hands. We are talking of killers, headsmen everywhere in the country. We have Boko Haram. We are still contending with Boko Haram. We shouldn't be opening so many fronts. And when you open fronts now, from the people against government,
it overwhelms the government.
It overwhelms the government, and that's, I think, what the government is trying to, or the State Security Service is trying to nip in the bud, see how this matter can be contained before it escalates.
Okay, let me ask you to hold that thought. You're watching the Arise interview, plenty more still ahead, as we continue our chat about the unfolding drama of the Revolution Now protests that appear to have been forcibly halted by the Nigerian police. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, as you've probably gathered by now, the Nigerian police have forcefully broken up the planned protests organized by pro-democracy activists across Nigeria, which they called a revolution march. The authorities declared the demonstrations illegal and treasonous. In a statement issued by the police spokesman, Frank Mbad, the police said the call for protest amounts to treasonable felony and an act of terrorism, and that the force would not stand by and watch any individual or group cause anarchy across the land. In its assessment, the protests amounted to a violent and forceful attempt at a change of government, which would be met by the full wrath of the law. And clearly, the police have kept their word on that. With me in the studio, the security analyst and former director of the Nigerian State Security Service, Barrister Mike Ejiofor, one of Nigeria's new breed politicians and former presidential candidate, Ahmed Buhari, and Dr. Biodun Adeniyi, public affairs analyst and senior lecturer in communications at Bayes University in Abuja. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. Could this be, as we look at it evolve and unfold, could this become easily your experience or my experience or the experience of anyone in the public eye? Does this type of behavior not set a dangerous precedent for the State Security Service?
No, I don't think so, Charles. I think in the next few hours or days, this thing will fizzle out, you know. It is the nature of our kind of system, you know. But I think at this stage, all parties in this dispute should actually sheathe their sword. You know, government should play the role of the big brother in the circumstance and release him or charge him to court, you know, for the tension to dissolve. You know, charge him to court or you just release him. You know, and watch what else he's going to do. For me, I think. It's a harmless person at the end of the day. When you look at all the apparatus, all the machinery available to government to deal and apprehend any individual, you know, if you compare the powers of government versus the powers of Sowore, you know that there's nothing he can do. Nothing really.
Nevertheless, we're reminded of David and Goliath, aren't we?
No, I don't think he cannot really do anything. So
it's not at that stage yet.
Is just trying to make him immaterial, like you said earlier, and you know that's not what the government should be doing at this moment. There are more better things for the government to do. They don't need this kind of distraction.
Well, let me ask you this, Ahmed Buhari. Is there a sense, just taking up from what Dr. Adeniyi was saying, that this could backfire against Sowore? Because in this country, I mean, there is a sense, to some extent, that anyone who disrupts or attempts to disrupt any kind of organized unit is a mad person. So if someone rushes in here now into the studio to disrupt these proceedings that we're having here for any reason, you know, he or she would be considered a lunatic, like somebody who is a loony bin. Is there any sense in which people see a refusal to accept the established order in that context?
You see, anyhow you want to look at Sowore and his antics, it also boils down to the radicalization in nature of his moves, his plans, his speeches. And you know, even though we were in the same race, even though we sat on the same table as the PACs trying to talk about some of these things, one of the most important thing there was, I kept telling everybody on that table, the best way we can get this resolved is to woo the people to like what we're saying, to agree with the proceedings that we have in our heads and the plans that we have for them for the future, to say, these are the guys I am going to vote for. If that cannot be done, I do not think any other process can give us the kind of country that we want. As we speak right now, what we are going to see, like he said, it's in a few days, it's going to all fizzle out. All of the people you see on the streets are going to go back to what they're doing. But I would still want the government to make this very, very simple for themselves by saying, you know what, we're going to charge him to court, we're going to hear why he said those things he said. We need to also allow people to understand that the words that comes out of our mouths can be misinterpreted and could cause havoc. I mean, look at the situation in Rwanda. They were mere words that got millions of people killed. Look at what happened in Tunisia. Look at what happened in Egypt. Look at what happened in Libya. All of those countries that went through this process, went through violent times. And as I speak with you, especially the ones in North Africa, it will take a while before they can go back to what they used to be before. So these are very crucial times, are very critical times, and then we must be very careful. The utterances are very, very important. I know there's a freedom of speech that everybody keeps trying to talk about, but even at that, what we want primarily as a people is a peaceful coexistence between everybody. And once this whole thing is not homogeneous, once everybody's not on the same page with you, then maybe you should re-strategize and ensure that you're coming up from an angle that is going to give you everybody that you want to see. I mean, the big people that have spoken about these things, whether Wole Soyinka, whether Falana, the truth of the matter is that they're all still from a section of this country. They're all still from a city in this country. If we start hearing from people in Borno, people in Borno are not even saying anything.
Right.
They tell you that we feel safer now than we were 10 years ago. So these things are very important.
Well, I don't hear them saying that, but that's entirely up to you to say.
If you invite them, they tell you things like that. If you sit down with people in Abuja, they will tell you a few years ago we couldn't even go to the Central Mosque on a Friday.
Right.
On Sunday we were expecting the news that the church had been bombed. Bars and places were under attack. The United Nations was bombed. So what I'm seeing is a new challenge. And the best way we can go about it is to see how we can all synchronize, come together and find a solution.
Let me bring Barrister Mike Ejiofor in, former director of the State Security Service. Just listening to what Mr. Buhari was saying, there no relation to the other Buhari, of course, but just listening to what he's saying, the multiple threats across Nigeria, you have talked about it on this program many times. I mean, the Fulani herdsmen, the kidnappers, Boko Haram, the continuing threat, ISWAP in the north. I mean, is Mr. Sowore more of a threat than all those things? I mean, does it require this kind of incredible focus on him when there are these multiple threats that pose a challenge and a threat to the people of this country?
You see, the truth is that nobody can be underestimated. He has followership. And there's general discontent in the country over governance. And people can easily be mobilized or misled into joining certain actions. We see when people talk about politics, they talk as if PDP or APC has its own market. They don't have. We all go to the same market. The cost of living is the same thing for everybody. So when there is hard time, it affects everybody. So I think the government should try as much as possible to reduce the problems it's facing than increasing it. We cannot say here now that Sowore is a greater threat than Boko Haram or a greater threat than kidnappers. But if it's mishandled, like we said when we started, he will get sympathy of the people, and the people will rise against government. That's the point I'm trying to make, that this issue should be handled politically. Is either he's released or he's charged to court based on facts or evidence. People saying that, like I hear learned senior advocate talking about...
And you're a lawyer yourself,
yes,
of course.
Talking about revolution, not being criminal. But some certain actions in revolution can lead to criminality. So we must be able to differentiate.
Right, okay. We're almost out of time. Let me bring in Dr. Biodun here. He was talking about the likes of Femi Falana and the suggestions that they're making. Let's talk about other people who've also been very critical. I mean, Atiku Abubakar, opposition leader, the way he put it was freedom of speech is not only guaranteed, it is the substructure of this country's democracy. And in his mind, this was not an arrest, this was a kidnapping. That's what he called it.
But I think the first thing we need to understand is that both the governed and the government are all Nigerians. First and foremost, we all have a stake in this system, and everybody comes to the table with different interpretation, different understanding of issues. What matters is how the government manage this conflation of issues that keep coming. There are some people whose views are going to be predictable in some circumstances, and we have seen it playing out.
Right.
And we'll still continue to
sort
see
of like from the opposition leader.
Absolutely.
Right.
So the important thing is for government to rise above the fray, you know, as a father figure in the circumstance and give quality leadership.
Okay.
You know, if their actions are seen to be salutary for the good of the people, if they are very circumspect, they are very dispassionate, of course they will have, they will gain sympathy. But the point I'm making, and the point we'll continue to make, is that for someone like a Sowore, or for any individual for that matter, strong arm tactics, overkill,
doesn't work. Okay, let's see if the government will rise, like you said. Dr. Biodun Adeniyi, Ahmed Buhari, and Barrister Mike Ejiofor, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
Well, that's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again for a fresh edition tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.